Hey, this is Jim Wickens from NFL Draft Fanatics. I am going to go through a first round challenge and a second round challenge to point out how the free agency frenzy that is about 4 or 5 hours old, we can update the draft cards immediately. We don't need to change a team needs algorithm or anything like that. Definitely wanted to touch on the Raiders and the Jaguars and maybe even a little bit of the Bengals, and show how the functionality that's built right into the simulator will get more realistic drafts for the teams that we choose. So I am going to present, and let me set up one thing here. There we go. Okay, so let's present. Okay, so to execute a first round challenge, you don't need to be logged in. You can see right here it says Hi Jim. If it doesn't say that, that means that you're not logged in. You should be able to do a first round challenge. The second and the third round challenge will likely require somebody to be logged in. Logging in is free. It's basically going to ask what your Twitter account is and what your name is. But that's so that we can keep track, because there's a rule that says you can't do a second round challenge until a first round challenge, but we can't tell who's done it unless you're logged in. So I'm going to do a first round challenge, and I'm going to go in for the Raiders. Okay. Now, as soon as I do this, it'll take over with some advanced settings. So even if you move those, it's not going to matter because the challenge has its own set of settings. Okay. So the Raiders, with the signing of Garoppolo, I don't think the quarterbacks are going to be as high on the Raiders draft card. So that was why I wanted to come in. So I am going to say that Witherspoon is a good first round pick for the Raiders. I think Wilson is a good first round pick for the Raiders. Jalen Carter definitely is. Will Anderson is. And I believe we have one more. And I'm going to go with Christian Gonzalez. Okay. So what we have are 5 possible first-round picks for the Raiders. So I'm going to quickly go to team needs, and I'm going to find the Raiders. And if you look, that's what their draft card looks like right now. So there's still 2 quarterbacks that are high, and Stroud is 5. So because the algorithm looks at 1 through 8, maybe the Raiders would still go quarterback, but my goal would be to try to get, I'm going to end up doing a second one just to see if I can get a few of the players to move up a little bit more. So I'm going to go back to the simulator. Raiders first round challenge. And I'm going to definitely say Anderson over Richardson. Witherspoon over Young. Carter's in the right spot. He was number 6 when I just picked him. So let's remember that Carter was number 6. Gonzalez is 9. Carter 6, Gonzalez 9. And let's go, in this case, Paris Johnson. Okay, let's go back to the team needs. Look at the Raiders. And you can see Anderson has moved up, Carter moved up. I think I said Carter was 6. He's now up to 4. Gonzalez, I think, was 9, and he moved up to 8. So depending upon how often you choose to do one of the first round challenges, the Raiders pick is pretty high. So to manipulate the Raiders board, it's going to take more than 2, meaning more than 2 users would have to go in, do a first round challenge, and eventually, if everybody skipped picking the quarterbacks would get pushed down the draft card. So I will do that one more time. And I am going to say Johnson over Levi's. I'm going to say Gonzalez. Actually, who would I get down here? I would say Quentin Johnson over Levis here. So I'm picking the players I want to be ranked higher than a quarterback. If the players were already higher than a quarterback, they should stay higher, right? So in this case, Gonzalez over Stroud and Young. And I am going to say Jones over Levis as well. So there's more than one way. You can just try to pick the players that you want at the top, or in my case, I'm saying that that player is still too high at number 9. So I'm trying to find a player that should be at the top for the Raiders. So like here would be another example. I think Osiris could be in play for the Raiders even as early as 7th in the draft. Okay. So doing that and then going back to look at the Raiders card. I never had a chance to pick Wilson. He was never available in that last challenge. You can see that Johnson moved up. Carter actually got moved down, but he was never presented to me as a player to pick at number 7. So I didn't have a chance to push him up or down. But you can see at this point, look at how far Osiris moved up, right? Because he was like 24. He's already moved up to 10. So I've improved the Raiders card, but I will let Raiders fans go in and do the rest of that. But just notice a first round challenge, very easy way to update a draft card. Okay. So let's do another thing here. So let's go back to the simulator. And now I'm going to do a second round challenge for the Raiders. Okay. So now I'm going to come in because there was at least one thing I wanted to do here. So I'm going to go in for the Raiders. So this is going to be 10 consecutive drafts. Every second round pick is unique. So if I choose to repeat the same first round pick 10 times, I'm allowed to do that. But every second round pick is going to be unique. So in this case, with a board looking like this for the Raiders, I am going to say that they're going to go Gonzalez. Okay. So this is my first second round pick for the Raiders. And I'm going to see, is Hooker there? Hooker is. So I'm going to pick him. So that says that one of the Raiders' possibilities in the second round should be Herndon Hooker. Okay. So I'm going to say Gonzalez again in the first round. Oh, actually, Will Anderson's there. So I'm going to say Will Anderson. Okay. Now, this second round pick has to be unique. So if Osiris is there in the second round, that is a no-brainer for the Raiders. Okay. Will Anderson is, again, so now I'm doing the third iteration. So Will Anderson, yes. I like Downs to the Raiders in the second round. That would be a very good pick for them. Okay, so we're back to the first round. I like Gonzalez over Johnson. And a good second-round pick for the Raiders. Richardson in the second round actually would make sense. So I'm actually going to do that. In general, when I do a second round challenge, I will try. Okay, so here would be an example like where we see Tyree Wilson. So I think Tyree Wilson in round 1 for the Raiders, great pick. So I'm going to pick him. And that said, he was third on the draft card at the time I picked him. So at this point, I'm probably going to start looking for some offensive linemen for the Raiders. So who should the Raiders be looking at here? I like Bergeron in the second round, so I'm going to pick him. So I'm going to get a little crazy here. I'm going to say Jordan Addison to the Raiders at pick 7 overall. And then I have to find a unique second-round pick to pair with it. I like Nolan Smith to the Raiders in the second round. And this is, again, an example of if there's a change in free agency, you could quickly, and that changes what you think the best player the team needs are, you can quickly come in and do one or more of these challenges. And what it will do is it will essentially reseed pieces of the draft card. That's why they were included. I think it's a unique way to start talking about who should the Raiders be looking at in round 1 and round 2. That's what the resulting screenshot will be at the end. I like Keion White to the Raiders in the second round. So you're going to have a screenshot at the end of this to say, here are players for the Raiders to consider in round 1 and round 2. You could repeat the same player in round 1 over and over again if he's there. That's actually recommended because that way you know that that player will be at the top of the draft card. So at this point, I think that's about the third or fourth time I have picked Will Anderson. Hopefully, by me picking Will Anderson 4 out of the 10 times or so, that Will Anderson has moved up beyond 7th on the Raiders draft card. And then I like Flowers to the Raiders in round 2. I would consider Myles Murphy at that pick. So some of these I'm going to be a little eccentric, but also a key thing. There was a quarterback ranked right ahead of Murphy. So on the Raiders card, I'm saying that Murphy should be higher than the quarterback because of the Raiders signing of Garoppolo today. So there is a little bit of, let's say, architect knowledge because I've designed this as to why I'm picking who I'm picking. And then Sanders of the Raiders, the second round looks good. Bijan Robinson, if he's there in the second round, you got to take him, right? That would be an awesome second round pick for the Raiders. That's an awesome second round pick for anyone. He was, I think, 36th on the draft card at the time I took him. Okay, so now I will say Gonzalez. And if Hyatt's there in the second round, that again, I think that's a really good pick for the Raiders. So anytime you pick a player, if there is somebody on the draft card ranked higher, you should see those two come closer together and or flip. Meaning that if I picked somebody that was 20th and there was a player that was 18th, I can't guarantee that 20 and 18 are going to flip, but maybe 20 moves to 19, so now they're 18 and 19, or maybe 18 moves to 19 and 20 stays at 20. You should see a little bit of movement. So here were the players that I picked for the Raiders, right? So you can see those who I think are the good first-round picks for the Raiders. And then here are the 10 unique second-round players, okay? So if we go in and we look at the team needs and we go back to the Raiders draft card, at this point, I've done 3 first-round challenges, and then I just did 10 two-round drafts for the Raiders, which means that I picked some players like 4 or 5 times, which should improve where they are on the draft card. So if you look here, I picked Will Anderson enough that he moved up to the top of the Raiders card. Okay. So just pointing that out. Okay, so a couple of other teams that I thought where the first 5 hours of free agency kind of changed their player boards a little bit. One was Jacksonville. So I'm going to do a first-round challenge and simply look to see where the offensive tackles are, okay, on their draft card. So I want to come in here quickly and make sure Broderick Jones, Skoronski, Darnell Wright, okay, so now at this point, who else would they consider? I think, let's look at wide receiver, see who's there. I'm going to say Downs over Hyatt. And then Paris Johnson. So that was me making sure that the offensive lineman moved up on the Jaguars draft card, right? Just that simple. And then the last team that I wanted to do was the Cincinnati Bengals, okay? And for the Bengals, I'm going to just do a second-round challenge, okay? So I've already done a first-round challenge for any team, which makes me able to do a second-round challenge. So, for example, if you're one of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams that don't have a first-round pick, do a first-round challenge for any team, then you can do a second-round challenge for your team. If it's the case of the 49ers, which don't have a second-round pick at all, you would have to do a first-round challenge for a team, a second-round challenge for a team, and then you can come in and do a third-round challenge for the 49ers. And so I'm going to do a second-round challenge for the Bengals. So, again, this is me going through 10 cycles, and what I was going to specifically look at for the Bengals is to see where the safeties were, because they lost both of their starting safeties in free agency today. So second-round challenge, but the first round, I think Wright's a good pick for them. So I think he's sitting there at the top of the card. Okay, so Chris Smith should definitely be considered. Making sure the safeties are seated right for the Bengals. Okay, this is my second iteration. So Darnell Washington, I know that Bengals fans really want a tight end, so I'm going to give them the tight end there. And then I'm going to look for a safety, Jordan Battle. I am also going to suggest that Dalton Kincaid could be a possible first-round pick for the Bengals. So I'm picking Kincaid there. And then Robinson should be under consideration for the Bengals in round 2. Okay, so round 1 for the Bengals. I like Forbes over those 2 players. I also like Washington. So I am going to go Forbes there. And then we're in the second round, right? Okay. Second round, if Washington is there for Cincinnati in the second round, they're definitely going to grab him. To me, that is again a no-brainer. How he fell past Buffalo or Kansas City. Well, okay, Kansas City did sign a tackle today, but how he would fall behind Buffalo in round 1 or round 2. Okay, so we're back to the first round. They could go Ika. They need interior line. And then the second round, if Jones is there, that to me is a good pick for the Bengals. Okay, Ringo could play safety. So that's not a bad first round pick for the Bengals. Want to check something? If Robinson is there in round 2, the Bengals would definitely take him. I'm noticing that Robinson is falling on a lot of teams' draft cards. So okay, so out of those players, I still say Darnell Washington. They like tight end in Cincinnati. I've listened to a lot of Bengals podcasts. I used to live in Cincinnati, so I see a little bit of my Facebook feed too. They like tight ends this year. Somewhere, Cincinnati's taking a tight end in the draft. And then this is the round 2 pick. If Ringo is there in round 2, he's definitely a consideration for the Bengals. So one player I haven't seen fall to the Bengals here is Brian Branch. So clearly many teams have Branch high on their draft cards. He's not falling to Cincinnati, I think, at the 28th pick. Okay, so this is the round 1 pick. I will go Forbes. And then if Ike is there, I think that's a good pick for the Bengals in round 2. Okay, so this is the round 1 pick. I'm still going to go Washington. And if Felix is there for the Bengals in round 2, that would be a heck of a pick. What if they want Laporta in round 1? Some people consider him to be the best tight end in the class. So it's okay sometimes, to try things that might be a little bit more eccentric. And then second round, Zay Flowers to the Bengals in the second round would be a good pick. Okay, so this is the list of players that I've assigned to Cincinnati in round 1, and then I made sure that there were some effective Cincinnati picks there in round 2. And all of that will quickly adjust the Bengals' best player available in round 1 and round 2 and bias it to the 20 players that I just picked. 10 players round 1, 10 players round 2. However, round 1 players repeat, so there's not really 10 in that list, right, for round 1. Okay, so I know that there is a lot of free agent frenzy right now. Wanted to just show off the power of the NFL Draft Fanatics simulator and show how you can use a first round challenge or a second round challenge to update the card. So if anybody is watching this, much appreciated. If you have questions, feel free to message me on Twitter at NFL Draft Fanatic. I am the man or person behind that tag. Let's go in and let's do one mock. And I'm a Bills fan, so I am going to come in and let's do a mock. But when we do the mock, let's pay attention to a few things, right? So what we want to pay attention to is, okay, so I set up the Raiders card. Notice Christian Gonzalez went to the Raiders there. We set up the Bengals, but they haven't picked yet. And my brain is already stumbling as to the other team that we it's a brain fart. Okay, so Bills need wide receiver, offensive line, edge. And of those players for Buffalo, you can see that a lot of Bills fans really want Hyatt. I'm going to be contrarian right now, and I'm going to go down. But notice that wide receivers, out of all those positions of need, the wide receivers were the highest. Okay, so let's go back and take a look here at a couple of things. Oh, we also did the Jaguars. I knew that there was another team that we did. So the Jaguars, offensive tackle, right? So that was somebody that when we did a first round challenge, we identified that player for the Jaguars. And then the other team that we did, as we pointed out before, was the Raiders. Okay. So now that we've done this, the Bengals, Forbes was one of the players that we picked. That's a good pick for them. And if you look here, Bergeron to the Raiders, that was a player we identified in the second round challenge. Okay. And then there was a tight end that we identified for the Jaguars. Buffalo, having gone wide receiver. If Freeland is there, it's either Freeland out of these two. I'm actually going to pick Robinson See if I can get him to go higher than 37. Okay, so let's look. This is round 3. What did the Jaguars take? Riley Moss. Who did the Bengals take after Buffalo? Bengals took a tight end. Okay, so at this point, Buffalo's already taken a safety. So Buffalo would again look offensive line. And Braden Daniels is a very popular pick amongst Bills Mafia. So again, look at who did the Jaguars take. Now, I don't think we ever went as deep as round 4 to see who was on the card, the draft cards for each of these teams. But you can see the Jaguars pick there. You can see the Raiders pick here. Okay, so Buffalo, at this point, we would start looking here. At this point, I like Scruggs, another offensive lineman for Buffalo. I like Baylor defensive line. So the purpose of doing the first round, second round, third round challenges is to make sure your team's draft card is set up moderately effective to what you think your team will do, so that when somebody is picking for a different team, the players that your team likes go to that team. So again, if you are watching this on replay, please like this. If you have questions or comments about the simulator or the functionality that I showed, please ask. Send me a message at NFL Draft Fanatic on Twitter. Thank you so much for watching. Any feedback is truly appreciated. I hope everybody has a great Monday as the beginning of the NFL's tampering period has begun.